What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I am a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, I thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for rocking with me another time. Look, this is very exciting to me. Today, Can't Help Myself turns 1 year old. I'm very excited about this. And if you would like to support what I do here, you could go to Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, Apple Music, whatever you like to get your music and listen to Can't Help Myself a couple of times. Put it on your favorite songs, put it on a playlist, something like this. If you are a Spotify user, I made a Spotify playlist that's got it on there. You know, lineage is super important to me. Maybe I'll make a whole different video about that. But if you would go check out Can't Help Myself today, just listen to it 3 or 4 times in a row or something like this, or in between, whatever it is. I would love if you would do that. I'm so very proud of this music. It's like my crowning achievement so far. And thank you for being here. Also, if you want to hit up my Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, you can find me on Patreon, etc., etc. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week, there's a couple of things going on here. Well, so in one way, we're just kind of cruising along. You know, we just had this big full moon in Libra this past week, and that was kind of normal, right? And then now we're moving toward eclipse season. And so the eclipses, the next new moon that we have is going to be an eclipse, and it's going to be a solar eclipse in Aries. So that looks like it wants to be a pretty major shift as far as the whole eclipse dynamic. And, you know, like the eclipses are moving from Taurus, Scorpio into Aries and Libra. And so that's going to mark a shift. We're going to be seeing a shift from super solar time to maybe shadowy solar time or something like this, right? But this week, we're not quite there yet. We're just kind of like cruising along. Like Mercury is deeply into the shadow at this point, but still moving forward. We think everything's going to be cool. Mercury in Taurus is like getting a little bit closer to Uranus in Taurus. And so we're maybe looking at some like technological innovation and like thinking of all of the possibility of all that. Speaking of possibility, one of the other things that we have here this week is the sun is in Aries, right? The sun in Aries is going to conjoin Jupiter. So that means that Jupiter is going to be Cazimi in the heart of the sun, right? And so that might be a little bit hard on the Jupiter stuff, but it looks really great for the sun. The sun is exalted in Aries already. And then to see Jupiter coming in, talking about talking about a confirmation and affirmation or something like this. That's what Jupiter likes to do. Jupiter tends toward positivity, or faith is another word that Jupiter is often associated with. And so that, especially with the sun, with the bright shining light of the sun, you can think about like a halo or something like this, right? Then to see these two together definitely looks like hope or optimism or something like this. And so there's all this kind of possibility that's inherent to that is still feeling good this week, and that's still possible. Now, when it comes to feeling good and the things that feel pleasurable or harmonious and this kind of thing, then we typically will talk about Venus. And so Venus this week is going to make a change. Venus is moving out of Taurus and into Gemini. So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First is that Venus moving out of Taurus means that Venus is moving out of her own domicile. That is to say that Venus in Taurus knows how to do the Venus stuff really easily, simply. I often think about Venus in Taurus as being very attractive. That's Venus in a yin sign, right? And so Venus's job in general is to be attractive, like in the way that sweet things are. Like if you leave some honey out, for example, then bugs will fly into it, right? Because they are attracted to that. And then honey is a really great example for Taurus as well, because it's sweet, it's delicious. There's a sensory delight that's associated with it. And there's a kind of, you know, if we think about bees and there's a kind of like natural or nature kind of component to it, like Taurus being the earth sign and this kind of thing, right? So there's something that's very like, let it come to me about Venus in Taurus, right? Venus is moving then into Gemini, which is a yang sign. This is going to be upward moving. This is going to be more active. It wants to do stuff. It wants to accomplish things. I like to think about Gemini as being associated with the pollinators a lot. I think of Venus and Gemini as being like a social butterfly and being like, ooh, I want to talk to all the people. I want to see what's going on over here. And isn't it so interesting if we have this conversation over here? And oh my God, I can't believe you've done that thing. Would you tell me all about it? That sounds so amazing. Oh, I have things to talk about as well. And like that kind of like conversational dynamic, that tends to be pretty fun. And I think that this looks like it wants to be helpful for the Gemini stuff, which has had a rough time for a little while. For several months, we had Mars retrograde in Gemini. And then now we've got Saturn in Pisces squaring all your shit in Gemini as well. So to see Venus coming in, looks like there's a little bit of pleasure or harmony or cooperation in that place that could be fun in a way that it might feel like a little bit of a relief. But we do have to get past that square to Saturn, right? Saturn in Pisces is square to Gemini stuff, right? So as soon as Venus moves into Gemini, then immediately there's a square to Saturn. And so there's a little bit of pause there. There's a like, I might have to think this through. I might have to like, if we're thinking about Venus and pleasure dynamics and harmony and these kinds of things, then it might be some kind of like, I might have to set myself up some parameters, some boundaries in order to properly enjoy this thing. Then it maybe is best if I don't X, right? So if it's like, the social butterfly at a party or something like that, then maybe it's best if I don't get super sloshed at that event, because if I do that, then I'm not even going to remember all these excellent conversations that I'm having or something like this, right? There's a sense of like generating some kind of structure or parameters that can then help to facilitate the Venus thing. Sometimes that means saying no to stuff. Sometimes that means creating boundaries, and that can be difficult sometimes, and that can sometimes be a little bit of a bummer on the like sweet thing that you wanted to put in your mouth, and then you have to be like, no. It's like, well, but it was right? And so that can be annoying. And we definitely are going to be seeing that sort of stuff this week. Venus is going to push past that in a little bit of time here. But this week it does look like the Venus stuff is going to be involved with Saturn in some kind of way. And that probably looks annoying for Venus things, which is interesting because we can also see that Mercury in Taurus being ruled by Venus, right? Mercury in Taurus is moving toward that Uranus conjunction as well, and is also slowing down, right? Mercury tends to prefer to zip along, to get things quickly and sort of like talk it out and this sort of stuff. Mercury can sometimes move up to 2 degrees in a day. That's not happening right now. Mercury is approaching a retrograde, which is also going to happen right there at the same time that the eclipse is happening next week. And so that looks like, so if we're thinking about Mercury slowing down and sort of like getting a little contemplative about things, right? And we can think about Venus, who rules that Taurus stuff, also being square to Saturn, who is slow, right? Then there's definitely a sense here that, Venus in Gemini is going to want to go out and do the stuff, but there's an invitation here to slow down in some way. Now, if you want to slow down in a Gemini air sign kind of way, then maybe you could do a breath exercise, and you want to go to zambonifong.com/music and find the breathe exercise that I have there. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Or you can also, this is probably a good time for something like automatic writing or, morning pages or something like this. I can't stop recommending the journal especially for Gemini things and for Mercury things. Then that's a good place to get your thoughts out. It's a good place to sort of generate some creative ideas. And then that's another good place to sort of like put all your creative ideas out there, and then you Saturn them, right? And be like, that was terrible. It seemed like a good idea in my head, but now that it's out here on the page, it's like, oh, this is whack. And then you can sort of like get rid of stuff this way, right? You kill your babies. That's like that's what all of the artists and writers and whatnot, everyone who makes something excellent has to do that, even though you spent all this time doing this thing and it felt so like it was going to be so good and you worked so hard on it, but then it just doesn't serve the purpose that you wanted it to serve. And so you got to get rid of that shit. And that is what Saturn is here to do. Saturn is often here to say no to things in the same way that Jupiter with the sun is going to be like, hell fucking yeah, let's do it, right? So we're almost looking at two different areas here. And so, you know, there's like a little bit of tension there. Can you say no to something in order to say yes to something else? This is really an interesting way to think about things. I'm out of time here. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for rocking with me and checking out the music and the Patreon and all of the rest of it. I super appreciate all y'all.